In my experience, there is nothing that improves the quality of what AI gives you faster or more reliably than context. Over the last 6 months, I've come to the realization that context is the single biggest differentiator between generic AI slop and highly specific customized output built exactly for you. Not a better prompt, not a bigger model, context. If you don't know who I am, I spent 22 years in public education. 15 of those were as a school administrator, and the last 5 were as a public school superintendent in Indiana. I'm the founder of Willow Run Group and EdLeader AI, and I help school leaders integrate AI into their day-to-day work to free them up to do the things that only they can do. Let's get started. Most school leaders I know are still trying to write the perfect prompt. They're optimizing the wrong thing. The leverage isn't in the prompt you type, it's in what the AI already knows about you before you type anything at all. Let me show you the difference because it's bigger than I think most people think. The lazy version of this demo would be me opening a blank AI, typing write a board memo, getting something terrible, and acting shocked. Nobody does that. If you're any good at this at all, you already put context in the prompt. You tell it who you are, what district you run, and what you need. And that usually works. You get a decent draft, and I'm not going to pretend that that's nothing, but there's a ceiling. To get that prompt good enough for real work, you're writing a paragraph of setup every single time. And it still doesn't know who your board is. It doesn't know your community. It doesn't know how you actually write or the things that you would never put in an email. You'd have to stuff so much into your single prompt that you might as well write the thing yourself. So the real question isn't a blank prompt versus a good prompt. It's a good prompt versus a real context layer. That divide is the whole point that we're talking about today. So what exactly is a context layer? Well, it's a set of reference files that lives in your project. The AI reads them every time before it does anything else. You build it once, and every request that you make inside of that project then draws upon that context layer. So here's the mental model. Context in the prompt is temporary. It's gone as soon as you close that chat. But the context layer is something that lives permanently inside of your project. The one-off detail goes into a prompt. The durable truth about you and your district goes into the context layer. When you actually build one out, here's what goes into it. Who you are, how you lead, your district and the real story this year, your board, the real dynamics that they're working with, what they want more of, what they want less of, your community, your cabinet, your teachers union, your operating rhythm and meetings and the cycles, the voice that you have when you write for different audiences, your values and what you're protecting this year, how you weigh a decision that touches kids, and your privacy lines that are the things that never go in a draft and the lines that you won't cross. The AI needs to know all of that stuff. Read that list and the point makes itself. No prompt is long enough to carry all of that. It's a layer and not a single paragraph. So there are 2 ways to really build one of these context layers out. The first way is that you can do it by hand. You can open a folder, write a short file for each of those categories, a few hundred words each, drop them into your Claude Cowork project. It's not that hard, and you can get it done in one sitting. An example of that is going to be my context folder here that I've got in my project folder. So these are the different files that I have written. They're in a markdown format, which is simply like a text style format that AI is really good at reading. You can edit and read those by using the Notepad app. So these are the different context files that I have: personal, district context, board, community, relationships, voice style, values and priorities, students first lens, any privacy constraints. I also put in here a copy of my brand guide. Now, what does this exactly look like? Again, I said you can right click on any of these and open them with the Notepad. So here's what that looks like. This is my personal context file for this particular project. So I can open this up. I can modify this. It goes over my career arc, my current role, what am I strong at, peers that I trust, that kind of thing. So I can go in here and change and update any of this, save it, and it lives in this folder here. Okay, so the first way asks you to really develop your own context layer from scratch. You create a new file, you write the information that's in those files, and you save it into the folder. By the way, this doesn't have to exist in a markdown format. You could use a Microsoft Word document to dump into that context folder. You could use a text file. But the second way that you could do this is if you have any of the Cowork workflows from edleaderai.com, we have built into them an onboarding skill that goes through an interview process. It's going to ask you about your district, your board, the way you write, what your values are, that kind of thing. It takes 30 to 60 minutes, especially if you do the full context interview, which I highly recommend, but I promise it will be worth the investment. And you can edit anything it produces. Either way, the files are yours. Whether they're plain text or markdown or Word document, you own them, you change them, nothing gets overwritten. And one more thing, drop in a few things that you've actually written, 2 or 3 real memos or letters or articles, emails, that kind of thing, so it learns your voice from the real article and not the description. One caveat to that, I would make sure that you drop in files and examples that are your voice exclusively. Don't drop the AI things in there because that's already jumbled with the AI voice. So go back in time before you were using AI, grab a couple things from your writing to use as examples, drop them in the folder there too. All right, so what does this actually look like? You can see here we're back in Claude Cowork. I've got a fresh project and there's nothing in it yet. I'm going to give Claude a real world example that's kind of a difficult thing to work through. This is a real situation that a lot of people have lived through, and that's enrollment in a specific grade is down for next year. So we're going down from, let's say, 5 kindergarten sections at one of our elementaries down to 4. And I've got to tell the board, I've got to alert the staff, and I need to communicate this all with families as well. 3 completely different audiences. One of them is going to involve a teacher whose assignment is about to change, so I really do need to be careful about how I go about this. The way that most careful leaders would go about doing something like this is by putting together a good prompt. So I think that's kind of the ceiling of what a good prompt can do. The more information obviously you provide in a prompt, the better your output is going to be. The more specific you give about your background and your context in the prompt, you're going to get better output. But how can we take that to the next level? That's where we're going to bring inside the context into the project folder. And I want you to see how that changes the output. So here is our Maple Ridge project folder. And if you've watched our previous episodes, we did a meeting prep, a parent communication, and a policy explanation workflow. And I went in here and added my context folder. So I've got 2 things in here. The context files that I showed you earlier, those live in here. I also put in here our district brand guide into this folder. And then I provided it with a couple writing samples. So a board update, a family message that I sent out, and a staff memo. Now, why did I provide it these? Because these are the 3 audiences that we're targeting. And I want the AI to produce output that sounds like these audiences in the way that I've written to them before. So one of the first things that I'm going to do is switch to our Maple Ridge project folder. And then I haven't done this before, so I'm going to cue Claude Cowork into the fact that it has a context file. So the first thing I'm going to write is, hey, Claude, please reference the context file that has been provided in this project folder. And then I'm going to paste our prompt. We're moving east side to 4 kindergarten sections for next year. draft what I send the board, the staff, and Eastside families. And let's send that off. Now you can see there it says, I will start by reading the context file in the project folder to ground these communications in the actual situation. So it's going through and it's reading that. Comes back and it says, good, there's a rich context folder. Let me read all of it, plus the writing samples that show Steve's voice for each audience. It's going through and it's looking at the personal context. It even mentions kindergarten section decisions specifically. Let me read the rest. This is critical context. Right here, you see some voice guidance here. It says very specific voice guidance, no M dashes, lead with the point, band phrases, register shifts per audience, close with a name and number, that kind of thing. It says this is at the heart of the matter. The student first lens, which was one of our context files, directly addresses class size when right-sizing sections. It says class sizes that still let a teacher know every child, even when we right-size sections to enrollment. This is framing that I'll use. Note, moving Eastside to 4 sections. I need to figure out if that's an increase or a decrease. All right, so it's continuing to look through that context. And then it again comes back to me with some questions. Is moving Eastside to 4 kindergarten sections an increase or a decrease? Well, this is going to be a reduction from 5 to 4. Have the affected Eastside staff already been told through HR? Your context files are firm that nothing about specific assignments goes in a staff draft before that conversations. And I would say, no, that's in process. All right, it's got the answers to those questions and it is going to start working. Now, here is a really important piece that I'm glad that Claude highlighted. It says, now I'll write all 3 drafts. A note on sequencing that matters here. Families should hear about this only after the board has acted and affected staff have been told. I'll flag that in my handoff, writing the board memo first. So somewhere in my context file, I spelled out that with big decisions, we need to notify the board first. Then we need to talk to staff. Then we communicate with families. That's critical in communication structure. And you can bake that right into your context file so that as it's generating information for you, it knows the process that you like to work through. Okay, another quick note. I like this. It says all 3 are drafted. Now the verification pass against the voice and privacy constraints that are outlined in my context folder. So that's awesome. Claude is going to take what it writes and do a pass over to make sure that what it wrote matches up with the context that you had loaded in your project folder. That's awesome. So Claude came through and this is what it produced. This is really great. It says, first off, it said, the one thing that drove the most decisions, your privacy file is firm that nothing about a specific assignment goes in writing before HR has talked to the affected person. And you said those conversations are still in process. So the staff message names the section count only and 0 implication about anyone's job. And this is really cool. It says 2 judgment calls that are worth taking a look at. The board member treats this as yours to own, which matches your operational calls that are mine to make note, and the May update where you had already flagged softer, younger grades. It includes a 168 versus 178, but no dollar figures since the board hasn't seen the budget specifics. And then the second judgment call is that the family's message leans on your own student's first language, a full classroom in the low 20s where a teacher can still know every child by name and need. And here are then the files. So let's take a look at this. Here's the board memo. It gives a summary up top, spells out what the numbers are, a why now section. It talks specifically about staffing, and then what families and staff will hear. It talks about that those audiences haven't been notified yet. So, okay, let's take a look at the second one. Here is an all staff message. Again, kind of direct and to the point. A few things I want to be straight with you about. This is an enrollment decision. Why are we making this decision? HR is handling the staff situation directly. And if you have a question about what this means for you, ask HR or give me a call and ask for me. It also, again, talks about, hey, families have not been told yet. Finally, we've got a note to the East Side families. Okay. In here, it mentions your kindergartner will be in a full classroom. Class sizes will be in the low 20s. That'll be important for everybody. Nothing changes about the start of the school year. It's calm, it's reassuring, it's fact driven. So those are the 3 documents. I think it's pretty clear to see how context impacted the output that we were able to get. The board version was fact-based, it was direct, and it had evidence. The staff version was warm, but it was also transparent. And the family version leads with what it means for their student. It put them in order and it honored our board first, then staff, then families communication structure. I didn't tell it to do that. It knows in my world that the board doesn't get surprised, and that's because I outlined that in one of my context files. So back to where I started. Nothing improves the quality of what you get out of AI faster or more reliably than great, meaningful context. Stop working on your prompts and instead build out the layer so that once you use it, you can continue to reuse it over and over for everything else. If you want to start, the free starter pack at edleaderai.com has 3 workflows and a getting started guide. If you want the whole thing, the Cowork edition has the full 60 workflow library and the onboard skill that helps build your context layer in about a half an hour. Either way, do this. Pick one project, build the context layer, and then watch the next thing that you ask for come back tremendously better than it was before. Once you've seen it, I doubt you'll ever go back. edleaderai.com is the place to find the workflows. I want to thank you for walking through this series. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Subscribe to our channel below. We will continue to put out content related to how school leaders can use tools like Claude Cowork, and maybe even Claude Code to help improve the work that they are doing every day in the building so that they can do the work that only they can do.